Hello, everyone. I'm Kalyan Balakrishnan, President of the San Francisco Local Interest Group of itSMF. Security is one of the, if not the most important aspect of enterprise architectures today. With the proliferation of devices and access points, users of enterprise IT systems can access the IT services from anywhere and any device. Ensuring that the information is secure becomes a critical function of IT organizations. Today, we'll be talking to a thought leader in the information security area. Rinki Sethi is currently a Senior Director for Information Security with Palo Alto Networks. Welcome, Rinki.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So please give us some details of your current role and some of the initiatives in the information security area that you have worked on and you're working on.
Absolutely. So I am the Senior Director of Security Operations and Strategy at Palo Alto Networks. Some of the key areas that I'm leading at Palo Alto Networks is, well, I should say the one big area that I'm leading at Palo Alto Networks is the build out of our next generation Security Operations Center. What that is we're actually, Palo Alto Networks is building out our new headquarters about a mile away from the current headquarters. And as a part of our new executive briefing center, we're going to have a physical security operations center so that our customers can actually come and see how we run a next generation SOC at Palo Alto Networks. The way that we're thinking about security operations is really different than how it's been done in the past. And so what that means is we're building a security operations center with a prevention first mindset. When you think about traditional SOCs, it's all about how do you respond? You just assume that an incident is going to happen, a breach is going to happen, and it's all about how do you detect, how do you contain, how do you respond to an incident. Right. Here, we're really changing the paradigm and focusing in on if you deploy technologies in the right way and you leverage the right prevention technologies, your attack surface narrows such that the people that you're hiring into the security operations center are threat hunters and things like that. So that's one of the biggest things that I'm focusing on is what does that technology stack look like? How do we build our operations capabilities in a way that we can role model for customers what a SOC should look like? Okay. So that's one of the big initiatives I'm leading. Okay. In addition to building out our red team capabilities, or what we call our purple team, which is how do you build out the right red team attack scenarios such that you can test against your applications, your infrastructure, your product set, in a way that you're finding issues before the attackers do, but also such that you're raising the bar of your security operations team to ensure that they're detecting and able to prevent attacks. Okay. And you do that in an internal fashion. So it's kind of a game. You do this red team, blue team, or purple team scenarios. Yeah. And then I lead security education and awareness for the company as well. And finally, business operations for the security organization.
Great, great. A lot of activities. So, as I mentioned before, Rinki, the enterprise nowadays the enterprise systems are, really becoming much more complex. So, what do you think are some of the important elements of security strategy for enterprise systems, and broadly speaking?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting. One important thing is kind of where I'll mention a few things. One is the security culture of the company is really important to ensure that you've got top-down support such that collaboration happens at the business level, such that as you're building new products or new services, or as for our customers as they're deploying our product, it's really important to have the right collaboration such that security's thought of at the kind of not just as you're going through kind of the development life cycle of a product, but at the very beginning, such that there's thought put into, are we doing threat modeling into a new product design and things like that. And so I think it's really important to think about that cloud security is becoming a huge thing as companies are moving into the cloud and you have data accessible from all different places. So it's really important to have security there. And so I don't know if you're looking for a more specific answer there.
No, that's fine. See, the reason is, until a few years back, right? I don't know if it's a few years or a decade back. It was enough if you just, I have my computer and then, there's a problem, I have my virus, detection prevention. So it was just enough to drop in some software that would, just prevent any attacks. But I think with, you just mentioned that, it's becoming much more complex, access points, multiple access points. Just having a detection software and just prevention software, I don't think that's enough. I mean, you need to, like you mentioned, you need to have this culture, the security culture embedded in, right from the design stage, and, I would say even strategy, then the design of the product. And that's, I think you touched upon that. So the other thing that I wanted to ask is, so that, like I mentioned, once upon a time, there was a good defense system was enough, but I don't think that is, that's enough anymore. I mean, you need much more than that. That I think you mentioned that. Security, security is one of the important aspects, but, in any enterprise systems, like availability, scalability, and security, I think these are, one of the very critical ones. There are others, but these are the critical ones. In my opinion, the availability and scalability to some extent have matured, with the advent of cloud. I mean, we have now redundant architectures, anything you can have a redundancy in every component of an, architecture. So I would go to say that there is some level of maturity has been attained for that aspect. Scalability, cloud, auto scaling, to some level of maturity has been attained. Do you think from a security perspective, which is one of the important aspects, we have attained that level of maturity, or, how far are we in that?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question, because I think as an industry, there's a lot of innovation happening in security right now. In fact, I hear a lot of my peers saying there's so much innovation happening, so many vendors out there. Who do I choose to go with for any specific vertical within security? It's confusing for people. So there's so much innovation happening. I think from a security perspective, it's only recently, right, that you hear about people talking about enablement, availability, scalability as a separate thing from security. Right? And so now you see that split happening where CISOs and CIOs or CTOs are peers to each other, rather than security being embedded into some other function in the company. And as you see that that's a huge maturity in itself. And so there's an actual specific focus on security that's not competing with priorities with technology or with IT or infrastructure or product. You really have a focus on security now. So I do think that the maturity is happening. I think organizations might be catching up to that kind of model, where security is kind of an independent group versus being embedded into a technology group where you're competing on features versus security.
Yeah, understood. Another important aspect, cloud, is taking care of the scalability aspect, but, I think, in my opinion, the security is becoming much more important, and not only just much more important, the security aspect is much more complex, and I would like to get your thoughts on this. See, we talked about multiple devices, right? Multiple devices, bring your own devices. So earlier it used to be, you had your own firewall in an enterprise, and you had a few servers and data centers, and, your applications are within that firewall, right? Now, not anymore, right? So that's a bring your own device. You can add multiple access points. You go to a hotel and, airport, and then, you can access, IT systems from there. Not just a user-initiated access. Now we are talking about the Internet of Things, IoT devices that could, talk to our systems. I mean, it doesn't have to be user-initiated, right? I don't have to be in front. So, and that's becoming much more prevalent, and that is going to be probably the next wave. Do you think in your mind that the security, is it going to be evolving much more, or how do you deal with that scenario where you don't know how things are going to come in? All you know is that there's going to be, you are not going to be alone anymore. The enterprise system, you cannot just put a boundary anymore. The boundary is going to be expanding, and, there's a lot of access points. So how do you deal with it? How do you think about security in that when you're designing a strategy and implementing a security strategy?
Yeah, it's interesting that you talk about IoT and all these things. I've actually got my Fitbit on, and I'm an IoT person, right? I've got my Amazon Echo at home and all of that.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting because you've got to, in that, it can either be really scary, or you can think about security being an enabler for that. And I think that's the way you've got to think about it, is to enable these new technologies, to enable IoT. The only way it's going to work is if you've got strong security in these places. And so I think when you talk about large companies, right, that are making IoTs, I think, or IoT devices and interconnected devices and all of that kind of thing, they've put a lot of effort into security. I think where there needs to be more work done is how we're mandating security for things like, I just saw in the store the other day a toaster oven that is IoT, or a pressure cooker that's IoT, such that it alerts you on your phone when your toast is done or your pressure cooker's done or whatever it may be. And so those are the kinds of things where I don't think there's any kind of security being even thought of, and there's some implications there. And so that's where I think there needs to be some mandates around security and what we're thinking about in terms of security and privacy. But I think rather than being scared, we've got to think about security being an enabler for this interconnected world that we're in. And you see companies that do this well are thinking about it this way. And that's kind of where we're going to see, I think, world-changing technologies.
Okay. See, the other one is how, we talked about the maturity of, overall strategy, but one of the most important aspect is detection, right? So you can do, we used to be, say prevention is better than cure, but that's not the case anymore, right? I mean, you can't just keep on preventing it. So are there, in the security world, the detection of these attacks, the detection of the security breach, is that, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, is that, I know it's an important aspect of it, but how important it is, you have detection, you have prevention, so which one do you think? I mean, where does the detection fit in here?
Yeah, it's interesting, Kalyan. So I'm going to challenge you, because I still think prevention is the cure. So okay. I think, first of all, I think splitting prevention and detection in that way, a lot of people start talking about, is it prevention or detection? You can't do one without the other. So you've got to be able to detect to prevent, right? I mean, that's the way it is. So you have to be, it's like if you think about a doctor and patient, you've got to be able to detect things so that you can prevent in the future as well. And so I think they go hand in hand. I think prevention technologies have changed a lot in the last few years. They've matured. So a lot of people were relying in industry on detection and containment because the prevention technologies weren't strong at the time. And when you look at the last 5 to 10 years, prevention technologies have come a huge way. And if you just rely on detection of threats, you're then raising kind of your attack surface looks huge. You're relying on detection. You need a ton of people, which companies don't have. So you've got to get really good at that prevention, such that your detection and what you're doing there kind of the attack surface narrows there, and such that you have people that are really talented looking at that small attack surface. Having said that, I think in the detection space, you've got to now rely on, there's a lot of strong technologies on the automation and kind of machine learning side, such that even when you don't know about, maybe it's one thing to catch known attacks, but what about the unknown? And there's a lot of new technologies in that detection space, relying on machine learning, on AI and things like that, such that what you're looking at is even further narrowed.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Rinki. I think it really clearly came out of your lot of thoughts that you have put in, and a lot of initiatives that you're doing. The last question that I have, which is not related to security, I think I read that you are also outside of office, outside of this professional one, you are into STEM and the education of STEM and girls. Can you talk a little bit about that? I kind of read about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I used to go and talk and say I love doing gym and I love exercising, but I wasn't actually making the time to do it. So I've gotten back into doing that. I've been going back to the gym, back into yoga and things like that. But I also have a personal passion around thought diversity and what that means for the cybersecurity industry. And one of the reasons I'm so passionate is I've got 2 kids. I've got a 9-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old son. And I want my kids to pursue science. I hope they pursue science. Yeah. But when you look at cybersecurity teams, they're pretty homogenous these days. And in order for us to get security is a very, very challenging field, and the attackers get better and better over time. And for us to tackle this big kind of hairy beast of a problem, we're going to have to create teams that can think out of the box. And the only way to do that is change up the mix of people we're bringing into cybersecurity and into technology in general. And so I'm really passionate about how do we get more women into cyber? How do we get people from different backgrounds into cyber, not just technologists, but how do we get folks that might be able to, that speak different languages, that have different kinds of degrees, that bring different kinds of thought leadership into cybersecurity? And I'm also really passionate about, we've got to go back to the schools, elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, and really show that technology is cool, cybersecurity is cool, and encourage people of all different backgrounds to get into the field. And I think we've got to role model that, and we really have an obligation to go back and encourage folks to encourage the thought diversity that needs to come forward in cybersecurity.
Excellent. All right. Thanks a lot, Rinki. Once again, thanks for your time. I know you're busy. Thanks for taking time to talk to us and share your thoughts. Thanks a lot.
No, thank you. I'm excited to be involved with your organization.